Okay, well, thank you for being here. Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Ciecko with avoidingmold.com, and today I have a guest. And my guest today is Bacilia Macias, and she is an architect, and she is from Portland, Oregon, or she lives in Portland, Oregon. She practices there, but she also practices in other places, including in California. So majority of her work is in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. She also has some projects in Truckee. And so she is an interesting person that I thought you should get to meet. And she's interested in what we're doing in this mold avoidance, moisture management world. And I'm always happy to bring on other people that are interested in that and building better buildings. So I'm going to let you, Bacilia, go introduce yourself with whatever else I didn't say that I should have said. And then we'll go from there and talk about our ultimate goal is to talk about codes.
Yes.
Codes and what people who are building in new construction might need to know.
Yes.
Is on the front lines of that. So I've done that, but I'm in the back researching mold and moisture management details. And so I thought this was a great opportunity to bring on someone that is in the trenches right now. And so Bacilia, let me just go ahead and introduce yourself. Things like are you originally from Oregon and where your is and why you do architecture work, anything like that?
Sure. Well, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much for having me. Yes. So as you mentioned, I'm a San Francisco Bay Arean. I was born and raised there. And so I come from a family of creators. And by that, I mean, my mom was a seamstress. So we did projects together and I was her little assistant. And I remember cutting patterns and putting those pieces together and then creating the whole. So when we were about 10, my mom had an addition done to her home and bam, I came across construction drawings and I was hooked. That was it. I poured over those drawings. I copied them, not knowing exactly what I was drawing, but I just knew I was intrigued. And so I took a lot of drawing classes and from then on in model building classes, you name it, if it had to do with putting things together, I wanted to be a part of that. And I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo as an architecture major and did 1 year at the Architecture Center for Virginia Tech in Alexandria, Virginia, and came back to California and obtained my bachelor's in architecture from Cal Poly. And just started right off the bat working in California with different types of firms that did different types of projects. So I obtained a great amount of knowledge, both architecturally as far as technical and design aspects of both commercial and residential projects. But it wasn't until about 2008 that I got the bug to hang up my own shingle. And that's what I did. And so I formed Bacilia Macias Architecture and have been running this company since 2008. So for about 14 years now.
Wow, that's great. We're similar in that I sewed all my own clothes when I was in high school. And so I started out sewing clothes, and then my family had they built a house. It was pretty much a standard house, honestly, but I was really intrigued, and the architect who did the drawings had a really cool house. It's so funny that we have a really similar story, but I was the same way. It was like, I didn't like the clothes I could find. So I was like, I'll make one. All right, I'll make my own prom dress. Because I don't like what I'm finding.
Yes. Well, isn't that amazing? Because I think that's the thing, right? Understanding that one size does not fit all. And it's funny because it wasn't until my adult life that I started to see that correlation, that my mom instilled that in us pretty early on, that if it doesn't fit, let's take it apart, nip and tuck, put it back together so it fits you. And so I thought, this is what I do now. And it gives me such joy and satisfaction when I can do that with a client. And I find,
right. So are you doing residential primarily or?
Yes. Yeah. So my specialty is residential and small commercial. And because I really enjoy both of those so much, and I get to work with clients of so many different lives. I love it. And learning about their lives as we pursue this process.
Well, that's great because my clients are building residential homes and they're trying to have them done right. And, so that's great. I'm always looking for architects. Anybody else watching this? I'm always looking for architects that have a passion for what they do and might be interested in always learning more. And so I think that's the other piece where you're talking about your mom and taking things apart. And I was the same way. Nothing fit me. So if I could make it, I could make it fit. But also it's in our homes. It's like when I realized what things were wrong because my family got sick, then I started realizing like, wait, we should fix this. Why is this happening?
Right.
And kind of the same mentality of if it's broken, let's fix it.
Yes. Yes.
So
I love that.
Yeah. And so you do primarily residential projects now. Did you do other kinds of projects before that?
Yes. Well, I've done everything from cafes to commercial bakeries to nail salons, dentist office remodels, for their waiting room areas. I pretty much had a hand in a lot of different types of projects, I'm happy to say, because
that's all good experience.
It's great experience. And I've even done, T-Mobile stores and things like that from the ground up for them. And so all of these little pieces of my experience have given me, I feel like, a really nice piece of knowledge of what to expect for most projects. Am I still surprised by every project? Absolutely. But I just love that learning process. So I'm always going to welcome any new kind of project and the challenges that they bring.
Okay, well, we got them in the management world. We got the challenges.
Yes.
And I'm always amazed to be like, oh man, I can see why this is really hard. Either the codes are very confusing.
Yes.
They change the codes. Sometimes the codes were wrong and they may be wrong today. And so then we have to figure out how to meet the code and not end up with a bad building.
Yes.
You know that. And also to keep on top of the codes that are changing so frequently that, 1 minute you do this, 1 minute they tell you to do that. And like there's some things that they're telling us to do that I even see today that I did in the 1990 and they turned it off and then they turned it back on, and having to do with plastic. We may be able to go there at some point, but I want you to talk about what you would like building clients that are people, your clients, other clients, anybody out there who's thinking of building. Do you do renovations too, remodels?
I sure do. Yes. Remodels, renovations, and in some cases, even after fires and things like that. I have been called upon to do those kind of renovations and what to do from then on in, because as you know, that can be a real source of mold problems, because it's not really the fire that damages homes, but it's the water that happened to turn off the fire.
Right. And it's the drying that doesn't happen.
Yes.
It also doesn't happen post remediation. We want to get stuff done. Insurance companies want to get some done fast, get them in, get them out, close everything up. And nobody's ever measuring dryness, and it is a measurement. So
yes, exactly. And that as an architect, I mean, if I think it's my biggest lesson learned, I think it's like, let's head off the problem before it happens. So early investigations of what we have to work with or what has occurred is so important to any project of any type. Right. And it takes me to like what my 3-phase process here for working with any new projects is listen, learn, and share. And this has taken me through many types of projects and has really helped me just keep me on that course to get to what I need to get to. And, the listen phase starts like, let's say, hey, Cheryl, you're my new client. I'm going to listen to you as I'm asking you some very crucial questions. And a lot of it's going to be about, hey, first, it's like, what do you have in mind? What do you want this space to be? And you may not have the answers, but we may start creating that priority list from there. And so my designer hat comes on, and I'm going to start percolating these ideas based on our conversation. But then the learn phase is where it's really meaty. And this is going to take, it usually is a surprise to clients how long and how involved that phase can be. But if we do it there versus later on in the project, it can save time, money, and a headache.
Yeah, planning, I'm always telling people, failing to plan is planning to fail. And I didn't make that up. There's definitely, it's a thing in anything we do. And what architects do is planning, basically trying to figure out what the problems are going to be before they happen. And I think some of the biggest problems that we see in our buildings today, and you can tell me if you agree, are that things weren't planned. Like the building was designed and nobody ever thought about the HVAC system, the heating, ventilation ducts, and suddenly they don't fit. You know, where do those go? And now we have to soffit, or something is strange because it wasn't thought of initially. And we as architects, for people who don't know what it's like to work with an architect like us, we're the conductor of the orchestra.
Yes.
But I like to say, and so all the other professionals, the plumbers, the electricians, the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, any kind, anybody, if structural engineers get involved, all those things, we know how to talk the talk of all those things, and we can bring those people together, but we also coordinate what they're going to be doing because we do understand what they do, even if we don't do it.
Yes.
So in terms of the codes, let's go start there, because that is something that we have to start at in the beginning. And one thing I will say that my clients are always, when they come to me and they say, I want a home, what they most want is one that's going to be mold safe. And manage moisture well.
Yes.
And I do have some thoughts on that. And usually it's related to, in the high level, simple is better.
And then
fit in everything that you want in there, but simple is better. And also site planning.
Yes.
Would be a big one for me, because you can never do the foundation again.
Yes, exactly.
So, and we want to keep the water away. So in terms of the codes, there are some codes about that, but what do you think for your residential clients, whether they're building or renovating, what should the clients know about building codes that you can share with us?
Yes, well, all of these things are really important. Yes, building codes are important, but also don't ignore zoning codes as well, because those are, believe it or not, become a bigger problem than even the building codes. And it leads to also the same thing of placement of the new structure. And let's say it is a house that we're talking about. Getting that initial piece of that look into the zoning codes, because that also can control how much we can grade a property, where we situate a property, the height and size of a property. Before we even dive into that design phase of situating the house, we need to know what our parameters are. And a lot of my clients get in trouble there right off the bat if they have started that planning phase but didn't really talk to someone in the planning, or their architect didn't do just a little bit more digging into the zoning code before they thought, oh, that's a little too big or a little too tall, or we're cutting away just a little too much dirt that we're allowed. And
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm saying the words building codes, but you mentioning there's more than the building code. There's other kinds of code.
Yes, absolutely.
Energy codes.
Yes.
There's
fire codes.
Fire codes. Codes are actually, so can you explain the difference between the zoning codes and what those focus on for our listeners and watchers here versus the building code?
Yes, absolutely. So the zoning codes are that set of rules, or the large set of rules, that pertain to your property based on where it's located. And that is geographic, based on the entire city that you are located in. And those zoning codes would control and they're really, what they're geared to do is see what, the impact you are making on the neighborhood, your neighbors, but also they're controlling how much you're doing to your property in itself. Like I said, grading is a big issue that they control. So how much you're cutting away from a hill, how much you're building up on top of a hill. They really, really control the location of your home as well. So knowing where your property lines is probably the first and foremost thing we look at when building a new home. And we cannot trust fence lines in the backs of sidewalks. It has come up more than often that I approach a project and we say, okay, well, let's say the property lines are here and here and here. And I say, no, let's do a survey just to check. And bam, sure enough, we're like 2 feet off in the front, or that fence line was moved this way or that way from your neighbors. All of a sudden, your property lines aren't where you thought they were. But a zoning code is going to say, I need this much distance from those property lines, and you need to follow that. Because if you don't, then you're going to be the one rebuilding or undoing that work. And so this is why it's super important at the very beginning that not only are we looking at those zoning codes, but we have the information about your lot that we need in order to use that zoning code to create the envelope basically of what we can build and where we can build and how big we can build.
Right, right. And then there's even things with roof overhangs and
yes,
height is part of the zoning code, isn't it?
Yeah, height is a really big thing. In fact, they even may include a whole thing about shadows in the zoning code. I've seen that become more and more of an issue, which is why it's so wonderful now. The world of computers have made it so easy for us to now create shadow diagrams. Because the zoning code may say, well, we'd like you to not have shadows casting in such directions and things like that, or not too much infringing on your neighbors' yards. And so we need to make sure that we're doing what we can by that, to control those. And by that, we're going to use 3D modeling to help us, to inform us about that. But zoning codes, as far as varying from town to town or state to state, yes, they do. But primarily, things like setbacks, heights, and sizes are based on our lot size for most of the part. But that's really what the zoning code is going to show us, those rules based on your lot, where it's located, based on your size of your lot and what's allowed.
There are some situations where you're unincorporated.
Yes.
And you're on a really big piece of property where it starts to be, in my book, you just want to know the topography and you want to know where you can get water and electric and plumbing. Is that something that you have to think about too?
Yes.
That you would suggest on the city lots as well?
Yes, absolutely. County lots, they have their own set of planning codes as well. And so they also dictate heights within those. Also, in addition to those things, they could also limit how we do our roadways. Like if you who do have a very, very large lot, and we are planning maybe to put that house maybe way far back into that lot for that privacy aspect, well, then we have to think about the other code that comes into play, and that is the fire code. Because the fire code says, yeah, you can have your house as far back as you want, but a fire truck needs to be able to put the fire out that it's out there. And yes, you have sprinklers, but they still may require you to put in a roadway that leads to that, that's compliant with what would be necessary for a fire apparatus or a fire truck to get back there, turn around, and come back out when necessary.
Right, and even an ambulance, or
yes,
you might want, there's things we don't think about in terms of turning radiuses, and
yes,
it could be the Amazon delivery guy or the UPS delivery guy.
Yes, absolutely. And then even in that early phase of just placement, like you were talking about, drainage is a big deal, and it is covered in that first planning stage that it says, you know, how the water can be handled. Can it be dealt with dry wells on site, or does it have to be taken off site to a stormwater system? So planning codes and zoning codes actually dictate those things. So we really have to pay attention to that. And, you know, come back to the placement of a lot, you know, we really need to make sure if we are situating something that we have that positive slope away from the home, and how to handle it on the backside. If we are dealing with a lot that's very sloped, we need to make sure that we're handling water, getting it away from the house, and then what the city codes or the county codes are saying we can do with that water.
Yeah, so I want to bring up whose responsibility is this, because I have had a client that put up a building and it
Uh-huh.
didn't meet code, and there was a discussion as to she hired somebody to put up this building, and it turns out it wasn't allowed, but they didn't think that they were responsible for the code. And
Oh.
the homeowner's responsibility to check for zoning and
No, 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 that I believe, and this is where a lot of people, I like to tell, this is where my service begins, is that beginning phase. Right at my listening phase, as I'm doing my designer's hat, I'm also wearing my technical aspect hat. And that's where I'm going to check those codes. It is definitely the architect's responsibility in their professional standard of care to know which codes impact your lot. And if they don't know, like, let's say if it is a fire situation of a specialty type of case, I'm going to call on somebody who knows. And in fact, in our AIA standard documents, it says if the architect does not have the knowledge capable of answering or addressing a certain situation, they have the right to bring in a professional that does. And that is something like, this is a team effort, and I'm not shy about saying we need a team member who can answer this better than me. And I'm going, you know, for the safety of the project, for the betterment of the project, you know, and like someone like yourself would be somebody I would call on if I were looking at a basement conversion. Absolutely. You know, because there's just too many things there that I am not, you know, I know codes to a degree, but am I up on the latest technology of waterproofing and things like that? Not completely, but I would rather say, let me talk to the person who handles this more often than I do. And then together we're going to work on this and make this work.
So I want to just point out, so that particular project didn't have an architect. So, and I do have a lot of clients who are wondering, do they need an architect? And can I just do it myself? Can I just hire the builder and put it up, and maybe I could save that expense of the architect? And I know we're going to be both fans, because we are architects, of why you should have one. But I don't know that you talk about that a little bit, and the value. Yes, we get paid. So however, you get something for your money, for sure.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the value of the architect isn't just in the drawings themselves. It's getting, like you said, the leader of the band, right? They're the ones saying who comes in, where, how, and puts it all together so it all works well. Because yes, you're right. At the beginning phases, we're going to be calling on people like arborists, and we may calling on people on civil engineers, but my job as the architect that's bringing these people in, I'm sharing to them, this is the vision of the client. This is what I need to accomplish. Let's all work together to get this going. And if I need to make those adjustments, I can start making those adjustments with the client, but I can also see how those are going to impact other systems in the building, because that's what really where our value stands, is what we know and how we incorporate it and how we see it impacts the other systems within the building. And even a house, people say, but it's not a commercial building, it's just a house. But there's a house that has systems, like you were talking about the ductwork. If I don't make allowances for spaces for ductwork to come through in and out, then yeah, you're right. You're ending up with, oh gosh, we've got to fix it in the field. Oh gosh, we're going to have to take some things apart to make sure it works. Fire
or it might not work. So
or it might not work.
Exactly. That they shove stuff in because they got what they got.
Yes.
And then the HVAC system isn't working well. It's not bringing humidity. It's not bringing, there's rooms that don't have the right temperature.
Right. Or there's too many kinks in the ductwork, or, you know, or fire sprinklers is a big deal, right? In California, that all new residences have to have sprinklers. But at the same time, if you've got structural running around with these large beams that maybe can't be cut into as many times as it has, because you got sprinklers, you got ducts, you got this, you got that, you got this. Well, now you've created kind of a problem. So now, because those two systems didn't weren't combined at one point so that you can see that coordination happen. Now they're scrambling to see how it can happen, and then you're going to end up with some very odd situations that look like afterthoughts versus a cohesive plan to make the project work from beginning to end.
And it
And I
hopefully
think
functions well because you have planned it and we're
Mhm.
not doing knee-jerk reactions at the end. And I would
Yes.
argue that, and you can tell me if you agree, but I think that there could be cost savings to
Yes.
having the planning where the contractors know exactly what they're doing. They're not going to have delays. There's not a big question mark of, well, I'll come give you a price after it's built when I see what you did.
Yes, exactly. Oh, no, I 100% agree. In fact, I don't, when you have that map laid out, right, of everything that goes into this building, and it's kind of worked into one master set of either specifications or drawings or some way communicated, and even bringing in the builder before we start doing this, because I actually feel that they're a valuable part of the team. They may offer some suggestions about how to make that just a little bit cleaner or a little easier to work with. I appreciate that about them. But again, as the architect, I want everybody, I want the cymbals, I want the drummer, I want everybody coming in together, because the music won't sound right if you've got a missing band member. It really doesn't.
You mentioned the word specifications.
Mhm.
People don't know what those are, and I'm wondering if you do them on residential projects, or why or why not?
Yes, well, specifications are this very, very detailed set of instructions produced by either the architect, or sometimes manufacturers include them when you buy certain products like windows, usually have their own set of specifications, giving the exact method and means that these pieces are to be incorporated into the building. In residential projects, we don't do them very often on smaller projects, because I feel that we call upon the manufacturers of like the window person, and that they provide their own for that. Even the HVAC people have their own as far as the means and methods of how those things are installed. Now, what we do provide is for residential projects, I will provide best management practices. Like, let's say that, any changes that occur based on that are not how we have it mapped out, I need to be informed immediately. That's how my way of quality control. But as far as writing my own specifications on residential projects, normally you won't see that happening unless it's a real specialty item that we really need to address. Then we probably wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. So in your contracts, do you use the, so contracts is a piece of all this, right? That and we didn't really talk about the building codes versus the zoning. Maybe we should go back to that. I'm flipping around here. But the other piece is the contracts and how all the drawings become part of the contracts, and maybe how those come together. But maybe you could start with the building codes.
Sure.
And since we talked about zoning and how we're citing and height in the general, and then there's another level, which is more detailed.
Yes.
So you can take it from there.
Yeah. So building codes then come in and tell us about certain protections they want to see. Now, this is all really based on life safety requirements here. So that's what the building code comes in for. This could be anything from the rating on walls that are too close to property lines, to just even the order in which certain walls are assembled, the type of chipboard on one side, whether there's a vapor barrier, the type of insulation on the inside.
And so that's for fire, just to clarify, when you say rating.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's for rating for fire. But they're also going to tell me, building codes also tell me about, okay, now you're going to add the insulation goes here. They tell me about the spacing even in the wood studs in the walls. They give you the guidelines for every nook and cranny that goes into the building construction. They're also going to tell us foundation, especially. They're going to give us widths and depths of that concrete, how much steel is inside that concrete.
Mhm.
how the wood stud wall is attached to the top of the concrete footing, the spacing, the size, how it should be handled. They're going to give us all of those little pieces that I then translate into my working drawings or my construction drawings. And those become part of what they say the construction documents.
Right.
And
And then you have earthquakes too to deal with.
yes. Oh, in fact, that comes in a lot. And luckily for the GIS maps or the USGS maps, I have to be very, very careful about things like that. So when we look at the cities all around California and even here in Oregon, I've noticed have wonderful databases for about your lot. So if you popped in your lot address into, let's say, Contra Costa County or Marin County in California, you would find the seismic rating you would have for your lot, and that usually pertains to your distance to a fault, an active fault. So you'll see the seismic rating, you'll see the flood zone rating, you'll see the fire zone rating, you'll see liquefaction, which is how your land, how much moisture is inside your soil and whether or not that foundation needs to address that when designing that. So you can find a lot of information about, yes, earthquakes is a really big deal for here in California or there in California. We have to make sure we have the proper bracing. Again, the building codes tell us we need this much bracing on this much wall for this length. You need to anchor the roof properly to the walls. That anchorage system needs to be carried all the way down to the foundation. You need to have, just all these little particular things that we may not think are super important because, oh, what does an earthquake feel like? Do they happen so rarely? But the codes are there to protect us in the event of an earthquake, to give us that time to get out of the residence or out of the structure in order to, be safe as much as we can be.
Yeah. The same as for fire. It's not necessarily that the building isn't going to burn.
Yes.
It's that if there's somebody sleeping in a certain bedroom, that the bedroom has a way for that person to get out if it's the couch
Yes.
burning in the living room.
Yes.
So exiting and pathways. And as you said, that the codes are born off tragedy largely.
Yes.
And that bad things happen. There, for instance, theater fires back in the early 1900s. There were a lot of very significant hundreds of people dying in theater fires and stuff where the doors were swinging in. So the codes now say that in an assembly space, the doors have to swing out. So if a whole throng of people, a crowd of people are trying to get out, that they can push on the doors and the doors will open.
Yes.
But people had to die for them to notice, like, oh, whoops, this isn't working very well. We need to basically regulate this to protect the life and safety of the occupants of our building. So codes are not something we just want to avoid. We actually do want to comply with them. I will say that they're bare minimum, and sometimes we want to do better.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I always include a note on here, especially about ventilation and things like that, because those are bare minimum things they give you for certain things, right? If the code says you only need 2% of opening glass in your house to make it compliant, 2% of glass of your floor area is very tiny. That's not really ideal, right? But
no, and for Mobies, fresh air is a good thing.
Yeah,
dilute.
Exactly. So I look at that and I go, okay, so in many cases, I will put a note in here. This is building code may say bare minimum. I'm going to say this. Do I get pushback sometimes from contractors saying, we're looking to do, why do you need to do that? Why can't we just do this? It's much easier. Well, because there's a comfort level and a safety level that I think I could achieve if I did just this. And again, this is the value of the architect coming in to be your advocate for not only, yes, you want to control budget, and in many cases we can, though now in this climate, it's harder and harder, but we're definitely going to be speaking to your design objective, your comfort, your safety. All of these things are something I'm going to be there to talk to you about. A great example just came up with my neighbor's house. he had some windows put into his home. They put in some flashing. Flashing is this waterproofing material that goes over the fin of a window if the fin is sitting on the face of the wall. And then they put some flashing, and it's all to secure the waterproofing. Well, the window person that did the installation didn't realize it because he didn't read the specification from the manufacturer that that material that they used caused a chemical reaction with the windows. And over time, it would have deteriorated that window and voiding the manufacturer's warranty. And he didn't look at that specification. And if it wasn't for the fact that somebody somewhere saw it, now that it would have gone unnoticed. And then eventually that fin would have cracked, and then water would have gotten in, and we would have had a very nasty moisture problem in, let's say, 5-10 years. And then it would have been a bigger problem. As you know, Cheryl, you would have had to rip off the finishes of the wall, rip off the insulation. Everything would have been lost in that portion of the wall just because somebody didn't read that. So building codes are there to protect you from it. They even have a section of dissimilar materials, materials that can chemically react, making them obsolete.
And sometimes we have to talk to the manufacturers themselves or specify in some way that we're using the tape for that product with that product. And I've had this on projects where I specified I wanted to use a certain tape because I knew it was being in the winter. There's reasons you pick certain products.
Yes.
And sure enough, I go to the job site, they're not using the product that I had specified. They're not happy because they're going to have to change it. But in that case, the tape wasn't sticking. But like you say, there's materials that don't go together. And so that's part of the value of the architect, is also making sure this stuff, this is what we do, and is pay attention to those details. And so that you don't have the problems in 20 years that are really expensive, or 15 years or 10 years, sometimes 5.
Right, exactly. And can again hurt you, right? You become something that can affect your health. So I think that's the value of the architect. You know, we're looking out at all of these aspects before even that first piece of drawing is done, and before that first nail is out on the site. You know, think about those things. We're working with as a team, and we're going to bring in team members that are going to help you. So yes, is it more expensive sometimes than clients foresee? Yes, unfortunately it can be, but the value is more, isn't it? I feel like, isn't the value higher, the well-being of your family, the safety of your family, and maybe just the project moving smoothly down the line, or smoother than it would have if you hadn't done this initial coordination, right? It's like scrambling to get the eggs when you realize, oh, I really want an omelet, and you got all the other things.
I'm going to pause for a minute and close my window because I do hear a lawnmower. They started cutting the grass at the park. And we're 24. Okay. Now I may just get warm here. All right. So we'll continue on from here. And that's all really important. So my next question is, anything else, like if you were to say people are embarking on a project, a construction or renovation that's significant, are there some takeaways, lessons learned that other people have, that you might want to say is, okay, these are my 5 things or 3 things?
Yes.
That I would advise you to do this wherever you're located, and whatever those things might be. What might
Oh gosh, yes.
I'm going to guess one of them is hire an architect.
That's at the top of the list. Yes, get an architect. Also get a survey done of your property. Know your property. Because another thing that can come up besides the surprise where my property line lies, you may have an easement on your property that you didn't even know about. Some public utility somewhere along the line has some pipe underneath your land. And this came up in a project where we were doing a detached ADU, and they were going to put it in the backyard. And sure enough, There was an easement back there when we started digging in. I said, well, where's your latest survey? I don't have one. Okay, so I started digging, and I found the maps for the development. And I said, oh my gosh, there's an enormous easement in the back.
And sometimes it's just for access. There's no
It's
pipes or
only for
anything there.
access.
They just
Exactly.
need to be able to drive through your property to get to the pole.
Exactly.
Or the pipe or the
Yeah.
electrical box or
Or
whatever
the
it is.
overhead lines in this case. There were overhead power lines. So know your property, get that survey.
Easements.
Easements. Look in your title report. You may have an easement on your property and you can't build on an easement. You can put a
Right.
patio on an easement, but you can't build any structure with a roof on an easement.
Right, but also know if you start landscaping that easement and you put in a lot of money with boulders and they need to drive through it, it's all toast.
Yeah,
Gonna get
it's all
demolished.
toast.
And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter that you put a pine tree in the middle of your, that cost you $500, $1,000 in the middle of the
Yes.
easement. If they need to
Yes.
drive through there, they're gonna
Yes.
take down your tree.
Not to mention your roots could be wreaking all kinds of havoc on those beautifully laid pipes. Yes, absolutely. One other takeaway, number 3 takeaway, access. If you are doing a large renovation to the rear of your home and you need to get, your contractor needs to bring in you need to move some dirt, you need to get materials back there, and you've only got like 3 feet on each side of your house, you may be paying a lot of extra money for how they're going to get that over there. That means 2 guys carrying 3 pieces of lumber at a time.
Or drywall, which is
Or
super heavy.
drywall. So access is really important. It comes up a lot, especially if they're doing any digging for, let's say your lot has a slope in it and you want to even it out, maybe move some dirt around get it off the site. Well, let me just tell you, then with the little baby a wheelbarrow back and forth that can maybe fit in that 3 feet, it's going to take forever and it's going to cost you a lot of money. So
Right.
maybe
Labor is very expensive.
Yeah, work it out with your neighbor. I've had actually situations where they've worked it out with their neighbor. They said, hey, can I take down your fence and we can combine our side yards and I'll build you a beautiful fence when we're done. But I just need a backhoe to come back there, take out that dirt, and then I'll build you the most beautiful fence you want. But I really needed to get that done a lot faster than 3 guys and a shovel and a wheelbarrow. So access to your property is really important if you're doing anything in the back, especially these detached ADUs right now. Everybody's like, I want to put a detached ADU in the back. Yes, that means digging for foundations, trenching for utilities, bringing big pieces of material back there. You need to have access.
Okay, so we have hire an architect.
Yes. Oh yeah, get a survey.
Get a survey.
Access to your lot and properties at from at least one good part. Number 4, utilities. Know what size utilities you are starting with. The amperage on your meters, the size of your water meter, if you have gas, things like that. Really know what utilities you have. In California, of course, if you're building a brand new ADU, you cannot grab gas anymore or extend your gas line. It has to be all electric. No more extension of gas lines to detached ADUs in California. Most cities are going all electric.
I think that's specific to California.
Yeah, that is specific to California, as I mentioned. Yeah, this is specific to California. Here in Oregon, it's not the case. You can do gas and electric, but know your utilities, because what you may be looking at is a hidden cost of upgrading those utilities to facilitate powering that new ADU or even a large extension or addition to your home.
Okay, so we have 4. Is there anything
else? That's 4. Yes. And number 5, I guess the biggest thing I always say is, I would say don't be afraid to ask questions of your architect and your team members. And this leads me to my, maybe number 5A is if you're on the site with a contractor and he's throwing you a bunch of questions, don't be afraid to say, let's bring in my architect. Let's bring in the other team members. So don't allow yourself to get bombarded with those questions. Stop the conversation and say, let's talk to my architect. And then you can ask questions, they can ask questions, the questions come together in one place and the solution is found, and this will help the project move a little smoother if we're just all talking together as opposed to a game of telephone.
Yeah, so that goes to being a team.
Being a team.
And I do think
absolutely.
that is the way to be successful in moisture management, is to approach our projects as in a team mindset, meaning that everybody's collaborating. And so there has to be a collaboration mindset. And so you mentioned the contractor asking questions and stuff. So this comes up a lot for me, is people are trying to figure out how to hire the contractor. And sometimes, do you help with that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And by my first piece of help would be to create a set of drawings for you. And that way they are all pricing the same thing. You know, that's apples to apples to apples to apples. This is why the drawings are so important. That way, when you're talking to 3 different guys and you're telling your vision, I'm telling you this, and in there you're telling that person that. Who knows what they're all pricing, what's being included. So what will happen is I will say, hey, Cheryl, you're going to get some pricing for our drawings. Tell them to give it to us in nice writing, nice written form. Most contractors will break it down by discipline, and then we'll go over it together. We'll go over all 3 of those proposals and see if there's anything missing that's crucial, because we really want to capture that. Absolutely. In commercial projects, we used to do it all the time, and it's not really, for some reason, a general practice in residential, though I really push my clients, please use me to go through these things, because we may be missing a piece that contractor A thought maybe this price, contractor B didn't bother to address it at all, and contractor C maybe is way over the top. So yes, absolutely, I'm going to go over bids, as well as handle any questions from the bidding process. So I'll say, hey, here's my email, send all questions in email form, and then that way I'll send out those question and answers in email form to all contractors. And that way we head off any of these questions.
All right, so that's 5.
Yeah.
Is
yes,
that a pretty
complete those questions?
Yeah, I mean, I had a question of just about the contract. Use a neutral contract would be my other one, because I see so many contracts that are the builder's contracts, and their builder's attorney has created them, and it's all about the client should pay, the client should pay, the client must pay, and there's nothing in there for what happens if the builder breaks his leg and can't work, or what happens, even things to be like debris, construction debris will be removed, including out of the ducts.
Wow.
So those are some things that I find, and I promote AIA contracts. I don't know if you use that or you write your own, where it's a pre-form contract that they have. It can be pretty long, even on small projects, but they're covering a lot of things that could go wrong in a project that we hope never go wrong. But there is an outside chance something could come up where you have to substitute materials, or something didn't happen the way that it was supposed to happen. And it tells you even what to do if something goes wrong. And
right. Yes. Well, one other way I address that, not only in the contract, but also in the general notes at the beginning of every set of drawings. At the very front, there's a long section of just lots and lots of general notes. And in those general notes, it does specify, if you have to make substitutions, I want to know about it. Inform the architect. If you are found something, especially in remodels, right? If they are opening up walls and found something that is not going to work with what it's in the drawings, inform the architect. Let us all come together to create a solution with the structural engineer. If there is, yes, absolutely, they have to maintain a site that is clean and proper and free of danger for everybody. Yes, and the cities actually create these form sheets that I include now on all my sets of drawings. It's called best management processes. How to keep trees safe, how to keep your sewer system safe, or your storm sewer system safe. You have to protect all of these surrounding areas from the debris that happens, because yes, there's going to be concrete pieces, there's going to be cement powder everywhere, there's going to be just a general, yeah, it's going to be like mayhem a little bit for a while, but yes, every day they should be really taking care of your site and your neighbors, because or else your neighbors are going to let you know.
Yeah,
what's going to happen.
Right.
And the storm sewer system, you know, we're not, it's our part to not, we have to do our part. Pollution, we have to do our part to keep a clean site. So yes, there's those guidelines included in every set of drawings.
And protect the building materials.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah, in Truckee, they have a specific area I have to have where the concrete is, or the cement is stored, where the equipment using the cement is washed. There has to be approved buckets with approved how many times those are cleaned and how they are washed. I mean, this is a very, we're very conscious about how we handle our debris in many cities and states, and this is across the board. I have yet to see, even here in Oregon, especially here in Oregon, in fact, you know, everybody's pretty conscious about what we do with our debris.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if everybody was like, I don't know. So I'm living in a new construction home, and it's interesting you talk about the cement. So for people out there, the cement that we use to make concrete is actually can be very toxic to plants. And so we have this sod in our backyard that looked really green for a couple months. And now as it's trying to go into the soil and spread its roots, it's all dying.
Oh,
and it's a really weird pattern. And I'm thinking they must have cement dust under there.
Yeah, it got out there.
And this is what then, you know, becomes your problem later. If we can plan and say someone actually has a responsibility for that, then we can head it off before it happens, hopefully, the problems. But if they do happen, then we have something to go back to and say, listen, you got to pay for my new grass because you were supposed to clean up the cement.
Yeah, you know, to some degree, yeah, we can provide these guidelines, but at the same time, there is that little separation of the trades, right? Then all of a sudden, means and methods comes back to the contractor. And yeah, if that contractor breaks his leg, or he's using a hammer and or he's, you know, on a ladder with one leg out, there's some bad practices going on and I witness it. I have the responsibility to point it out to the foreman and even to the construction company and say, I'm seeing some poor practices here. I'm telling you in writing that you should probably be putting attention to such and such situations that I saw. But then at that point, I have to stop, because then it becomes like a funny thing, like, okay, now the contractor has to take responsibility because they have also their own protections in place. So they have to protect themselves and go, we're not going to listen to that architect. We have our protections in place. We have to follow this. We have our liability to take care of. Thank you, but we've got it. Okay.
But ultimately, I think there is some insurance that ultimately the homeowner has some liability that they need to have some protection in. I don't know what that is where you're
at. But you know what? Actually, this comes to another situation, workers' comp and things like that, because we've had contractors, or not necessarily contractor, who was an arborist who was on a lot for a project of mine, and he got hurt. And sure enough, my client got very frightened. I said, wait, is this a licensed arborist? Is this a person who's bonded and a licensed? Then they go back to their workers' comp, because it does cover that. They don't have the right to first knock on your door and say, hey, I hurt myself, can I have X amount of money? It comes back to workers' comp. That is what it's there for. This is why I always tell clients, please hire licensed contractors, licensed arborists, licensed tradesmen on your projects. Because it's not only because they've got a fancy title and they charge you more, but that licensing means that they had to carry a certain amount of protection for themselves, for you, and for their employees.
Well said.
Higher license.
Yeah. So, okay. So now let's talk about your details. If people want to work with you, you do Portland, you do Oregon, I'm assuming.
Yes, I do Washington State as well, nearby cities here, Vancouver, all up and down here. So yes, and I am, yes, and love doing
Washington, Oregon, California.
And even outside of that, I've done some consultation where people just had some ideas. My sister referred me to somebody, she lives in North Carolina, and needed a little assistance in placing, just some advice on placing a home or some idea of where they wanted to kind of situate it. And I just was able to do a Zoom call like this. Through the beauty of some 3D programming and a little bit of CAD drafting, I was able to create a little site, and we just started playing with some forms and say, here it is, here's what we can do, and here's my 2 cents, and now you can bring it to a design specialist, because at least are a design professional in your area, because sometimes just having that initial brainstorming session with somebody can help formulate that idea so that the architect that maybe you choose to work with for whatever reason in your region has a better idea what you want. And so I'm always open to even help in that capacity as well.
Yeah.
But yes, if people want to reach out to me, I have a website. It's www.baciliamacias.com. There is a get in touch button. Click. It inputs your contact information and what you are thinking about, and absolutely I get in touch.
Well, thank you. This has been really great conversation. And so the 5 things were: hire an architect who's going to be part of a team and give you a team.
Yes.
Survey, access to the site is important.
Yes.
Even on a big site, you may have big boulders and a cliff somewhere that you can't get around.
Or a big giant tree.
Well, that you want to save, right? And so you can drive in the bulldozer past the big tree,
exactly.
messing up the roots.
Yeah, the roots. Yes.
Yeah, utilities, and that on bigger sites, that those of you that have septics and wells.
Yes.
And that comes under utilities.
Yes.
And number 5, I think, is a really good one, is just always be asking questions. And I think a lot of my population is doing that and trying to learn on their own.
Yes.
And this has been great, I think, for them as well as for me to have someone else articulate some of this stuff and clarify some of the things that I might not be thinking of. So this has been great. I hope people are appreciating it. Bacilia Macias. So again, that website was
www.baciliamacias.com.
Okay. And so especially in Washington, Oregon, California, or possibly for consulting in other places.
It's other places, exactly. All right.
And how I work with other architects is that I am in the consulting role, and I usually get brought on by other architects that are open to having experts or I don't even like to use expert, but specialists who specialize in certain areas. And because I do research the water damage stuff day in and day out, even though I am a designer, I'm focused on that. I can be the fast track to solutions that might take a lot longer to research.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think of it as a doctor. If somebody was complaining or had a heart issue, I'm going to bring in the cardiologist, and we're going to consult. That's how it works. And then we all learn something, because if it gives me the opportunity also to learn something about, how to do this, so that for the next project, I'm a little better informed. And then when I bring you on again, I'm like, we covered that, but let's do this. What's next? What's the latest thing? How can we help our client save a little money, make this a little better?
Yeah. And it is about saving money too. And there is value in planning and in research, so that we're not just shooting from the hip and getting the most expensive products.
Right.
May not need those.
Yes.
Because it's the latest and greatest thing. So don't necessarily assume that the budget's going to get blown because we're looking at too much stuff. We actually, part of what I think what architects do is they also recognize you have a budget, and we're going to help you as much as possible stay in that budget, but with value. With value,
especially. Exactly. Well,
okay.
wonderful. Thank you, Cheryl. It's been a pleasure. I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bacilia, for being here. And you can find Bacilia at her website, which is hername.com. And yeah, we'll do this again maybe sometime. If there might be another topic, we can come on again.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I look forward to hopefully working with you on some projects.
Yes, absolutely. And, yes, yeah, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. We're very
there's a lot of need there. So. All right. Well, thank you, Bacilia. And thank you everyone for being here. We'll see you on the next video.
Thank you. Bye-bye.